Okay, can we start?
Yes, sir.
So we're done with indology, right? Indian thinkers we completed indology and structural functionalism, and then Marxist perspective. So indology by G.S. Ghurye, structural functional perspective by MN Srinivas, Marxist perspective by A.R. Desai. Okay, so any doubts here? Okay, then we will continue with our discussion. Today we'll be discussing about, agrarian societies. So there is a chapter on agrarian social structure. So another chapter you will get some questions like mode of production in Indian agriculture, etc. And then a green revolution. So actually I'm mixing different chapters here. This is one chapter. You will see, this is how you need to prepare also. This you will see in one agrarian social structure area, and this you will see in a different chapter, these two. Okay, so three chapters we are actually going to mix, and apart from this we will also talk about some other concepts like agrarian class structure, so which is not mentioned here. We will also discuss about that, not in today's session, maybe today, tomorrow we will cover everything. So green revolution, everything will be connected and covered together. So it will be easy for you to study if you can go with an integrated approach like this. So you can see here some introduction you can understand, like agrarian refers to social situation which derives its existence from agriculture. So when we talk about agrarian, it means related to agriculture. Okay, agrarian social structure means it includes holistic patterns of relationship woven around agriculture. So it's a patterns of relationship. Shalu, your mic is on. Please turn off your mic. Arun, Shalu, please turn off your mic. So when we talk about agrarian social structure, it includes the holistic pattern of relationship. These are terms which are not that significant. Okay, so pattern of relationship woven around agriculture. With respect to agriculture, you are talking about the patterns of relationship. So those who are involved in relationship within the broad framework of agriculture, that's what agrarian social structure. So similarly, agrarian social organization. Agrarian social organization includes the pattern of activity woven around agriculture. So agrarian organization means it is related to pattern of activity. Agrarian structure means it is pattern of relationship. Okay, so if you talk about the different activities which is performed, if it is connected to agriculture, that is agrarian social organization. So just for explaining that two terms, because you will see this term time and again in this discussion. Agrarian social structure and agrarian social organization. Thus, the study of agrarian society involves understanding its structure as well as organization. So keep in mind, when we talk about structure, it's all about the relation between people which is connected to agriculture. That's what agrarian social structure. Agrarian social organization means it's the pattern of activities which is done with respect to agriculture. The term rural in sociological sense includes both agriculture and non-agriculture activities. So when we talk about rural, both agriculture as well as non-agriculture will come. Sometimes, when it comes to economy or other branch of knowledge, whenever we talk about rural, mainly we connect it with agriculture. But that is not the case. In sociology, we consider both agriculture and non-agriculture. For example, when we talk about agriculture labor, right? So this means what? People who are employed in agriculture. That's what agricultural labor. But when we talk about rural labor, okay, this include agricultural labor as well as non-agricultural labor. Both are part of rural labor. So within rural, agriculture will come and non-agricultural activities will also come. So that's what the term rural includes both. Okay. Although economically in India, all the areas having more than 75% population involved in agriculture are designated as rural areas. Thus, in India, sometimes rural society is interpreted as agrarian society and vice versa. Okay, but theoretically the term rural and agrarian are different. I hope you understood. So when we talk about rural, if this is rural, here predominantly this is related to agriculture. So non-agriculture will also be there. So if it is more than 75% related to agriculture, that is rural. And because of that reason, rural and agriculture is actually synonymously used. But it is not the case that when we talk about rural, it is only agriculture. There are non-agricultural activity in all rural areas. Okay, like peasants, artisans, all these people are not peasants, artisans, etc. are there. Okay. So, for example, you can see here agricultural labor include people involved in agriculture, but the term rural labor involves both agriculture and non-agricultural labor. Immediately after independence, the study of Indian rural areas is nothing more than the study of agrarian system. Why? Because predominantly it is related to agriculture. Okay, so why you are studying rural areas after independence? Because of poverty, because of inequality, because of agricultural productivity issues. To solve all these problems, you need to study the rural area basically. Okay, so you need to study agricultural setup, and you have seen when we discussed about functionalism, structural functional perspective, post independence the sociology is actually focusing on studying the rural areas by employing a field study, field work for helping the welfare state in the policy planning, policy implementation, etc. Okay, but with time, due to occupational differentiation and the extension of welfare activities in villages, the term rural and agrarian had become distinct conceptual categories. In spite of all these changes, still agriculture has continued to be dominant, especially in terms of number of people engaged in agriculture, either directly or indirectly. Close to 60% of people are actually engaged in agriculture, either directly or indirectly. Maybe agriculture based, agro based industries it will be, okay, or directly agriculture. So in terms of employment or number of people who are engaged in agriculture is still dominating, especially in rural areas or basically in rural areas. In India, agrarian areas or rural areas are understood in terms of a unit of living called village. So now we are going to start our discussion that is related to village studies. So rural areas are understood in terms of unit of living village. Historically, India is understood as land of villages. Villages have been important from demographic, economic and political point of view. Apart from this, statistical data highlighting the importance of villages are also available, okay, in terms of different contribution from the village. Okay, socially, villages have been an ideological category. It is considered as an ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India. So the actual social life in India will be visible in villages, the connections, the caste, the joint family. If you need to study India, you have to study villages, because it is the ultimate signifier of authentic social life in India. Social life means it's all about the way people interact, how caste is defining the relation, how Judgmani system is functioning, how joint family is working. Everything can be understood and seen from the villages. That's what I mean by this particular statement. Now pre-British, see, we have already discussed about the pre-British time. Okay, so British times some indologists were studying villages. Post-independence time, sociologists were studying villages. So you will see entirely different understanding during this study and during this study. So that's what we are going to see. So when Britishers are studying, this is basically based on indology. So a traditional view will be developed. Okay, we are going to see that, like isolated, monolithic, unchanging entities, like that they will develop a view. The modern understanding will develop a better perspective on village studies. So we will broadly see what is the pre-British and British period and post-British period. Pre-British, it is not much there. So you can see here pre-British. Since ancient times, attempts were made to understand Indian villages. In pre-British period, the understanding of villages grew from various indological sources like travelogues, literary works and religious scriptures. Villages were considered as microcosm of Hindu way of life and authentic manifestation of traditional Hindu social organization. So whenever we are talking about traditional Hindu social organization, here we are actually talking about caste, okay, Judgmani system, joint family, all these social organization is what we are actually discussing. So villages were the authentic manifestation. If you need to know what all these things are, the manifestation clearly you can see in the villages. Traditional society, traditional villages, if you go, you will see how the caste is working, how joint family and everything is functioning, and how everything is interlinked, and how all these social organizations are defining the relationship between each individual. So everything you can see in the villages. That's not important. British period, even this is also not that important, but you need to write one or two understanding from here. British period. During the British period, conscious attempts were made to generate an idea of Indian village, especially because what? Because they need to go for revenue, right? Land revenue. Mainly revenues from land in India, from agriculture, mainly from land. So for that purpose, they have to study villages, right? So the initial village studies were motivated by colonial interest of facilitating land revenue collection and maintenance of law and order. So this is the main reason. This we have discussed already. When Indology came during Warren Hastings' time, the main concern was related to law and order, law, and also the legal aspect as well as revenue. Because if you need to administer any area, you need to have control over two aspects mainly. One is related to the legal system, the other is related to revenue. If you do not have control in legal system and the revenue collection, you cannot administer. So as formally when their administration started, especially after Regulating Act of 1773, after Warren Hastings' time, you know, you can see a lot of village studies are conducted, okay, by the British scholars and British administrators also. That anyway we have discussed under Indology, but specific to village, I will give you some points here also, okay. So village studies during this period were conducted by British administrators and scholars. So this point also I have discussed before. The Indologists, initial Indologists were either scholars or administrators, but what is a common thing here? Both actually were British, right? So there is a very famous statement that the Britishers came to India and they taught us who we were, what we were, etc., and our origin, everything. Okay. These studies highlighted the isolated, unchanging and orthodox view of Indian village. So they highlighted this aspect of Indian village. You need to write exactly the same. Isolated, that means villages are isolated. They don't have any interconnection. Let's say these two villages are not connected. These two villages are not connected. Okay, but there are obviously criticisms. We will see that criticism later when it comes to the post-independent study. What can anyone tell what kind of connection villages have? Especially in terms of marriage rule, right? If you remember, I've told you the marriage rule is actually clan exogamy, and I've told you people tend to live in the village if they belong to the same gotra or clan. So you cannot marry from the village. So at least for marriage, you need to be connected to the other village, because village exogamy, similar to clan exogamy, is what actually practiced. So this is actually challenged later. Isolated, not that true. Okay, unchanging, that means very primitive and they remain the same. No, it is changing. We will see that orthodox view of Indian villages. So the initial study of villages come up with this idea: isolated, unchanging and orthodox view of Indian villages. The studies by Munro, Metcalfe, Henry Maine during late 18th and 19th century, and Baden-Powell and Slater during 19th and 20th century consider Indian villages as closed and isolated. So this is a keyword which you need to write. Maybe few thinkers you can write from here. These are not thinkers, these are British scholars and British administrators. Okay, not that important from our point of view. Even if you are not writing the name, it's perfectly fine. But if it is possible, write one or two and say that the initial understanding of Indian village during British time was isolated, unchanging and orthodox, and they highlighted the closed and isolated aspect of Indian villages, or they understood Indian villages as closed and isolated. And the statement you have to quote exactly like this, centralize and write it properly in the inverted comma. Metcalfe wrote, these communities are little republic, okay, having everything they need within themselves, so they have everything and independent of any foreign relation. Here what do you mean by foreign relation? Between two villages there is no connection, that's what you mean to say here. Okay, so every village is independent. So this village is independent, this village is independent. Okay, they are little republic within themselves, like our countries, right? So this is the understanding of villages that they have developed. He considered Indian villages as monolithic, atomistic and unchanging entities. During this period, the idea of village was based on the book view, and caste and religion were considered as a central institution governing social life in India. Okay, so it is basically book view, it is basically an indological view, and caste and religion, the culture centric view. Okay, so culturological approach, that's what indological approach, that's what bookish view. So caste and religion is actually playing the central role during this point of time. Village was designated as the representative of Indian economy. Okay, with the establishment of sociology as a discipline in India, an era of socio-anthropological view of villages started. Apart from this, oppressive policies of British had left the peasantry highly impoverished, means led to poverty. Okay, what do you mean by this oppressive policies of British? Can anyone tell any policies here? Which is connected to peasantry. I am talking about Zamindari settlement,
Zamindari system,
Ryotwari settlement, Mahalwari settlement, all these land tenure systems which is charging very high rate of interest. Apart from that, the emergence of money lenders, all these resulted in impoverishment of peasantry. A number of peasant revolts and tribal revolts were witnessed. All these are your GS topics: peasant revolts, tribal revolt, Santhal rebellion. All these you need to prepare separately, okay, for your GS prelims and mains. This led to initiation of new type of village study from the purely economic angle. These studies were mainly done through rural surveys. So this is, I'm talking about economic angle, economic studies. Okay, so village studies are now, you can see, divided into two types. One related to economic studies, because of those issues like land tenure system, impoverishment, poverty, unemployment, inequality, all these were generated after the land tenure system. Apart from that, socio-anthropological studies was also there. So first we'll see the economic studies. The economic studies attempted to understand the economic relation, especially in the context of understanding problems like rural indebtedness, famine, bondage and frequent price rise, etc. So these are in the domain of economy, right? Indebtedness, famine, bondage, frequent price rise, etc. No holistic view of villages were generated. The emphasis was more on understanding land relation, income disparity, class structure, etc. So it's all about understanding the issues. For example, Punjab Board of Economic Inquiry conducted survey in 1920s, Bengal Board in 1930s, and Vishwabharati University conducted survey in Bengal. The contribution of J.C. Kumarappa is unparalleled in this regard. These studies became guide to British policies but could not generate a holistic view of villages in India. So the problem with economics studies is actually the holistic view of Indian villages were not generated. See, this is not important, okay? You don't want to write this in your exam. I'm just giving you for the sake of, understanding the idea, okay? What you can say is, during this time you can see both economic studies as well as socio-anthropological studies or sociological studies. Economic studies are focusing, one line is enough from this, economic studies are mainly focusing the problems of indebtedness, famine, bondages, etc. Okay, and this also, no holistic view of Indian villages were generated. Now comes to socio-anthropological studies. Okay, now one important thing here is, what is mentioned in syllabus is this only, village studies. Okay, so they can ask you anything from here, like SC Dube village studies, MN Srinivas village studies, AR Desai village study, different studies can be asked. There is a potential, but quite often what we have seen is they are asking about SC Dube, they are asking MN Srinivas also, they will ask. Okay, so if it is MN Srinivas, you will talk about Sanskritization, you will talk about dominant caste, all these things we have before also discussed, and it is coming again in the caste system. So these are the specific studies, and something else is asking means it will be very difficult for you because we cannot prepare like that. Village studies, hundreds of village studies are there. It is just like, you know, in your paper 1 chapter 3 there is a topic of research methods, right? Research methods, hundreds of research methods are there, but we cannot study everything. We'll study the common things. So here also what I am trying to do here is I am consolidating all the village studies. So what was the understanding which is developed after village studies post independence? That's what we are trying to see. So you can fit different people into this and you can write a general answer. Otherwise you should have a clear idea about each and every village studies, but that is not possible. Maybe to an extent of going with SC Dube you can do, MN Srinivas you can do. Okay, in essential sociology SC Dube is given. That is very simple, one small paragraph is given. I have not incorporated that here. You can read that SC Dube village study. Okay, a very small paragraph. So it's actually a very vast topic and you need to prepare have an idea about village studies. This was the understanding pre-independence and this is the understanding post-independence. All those ideas that we have developed pre-independence actually challenged. The monolithic, the isolated, the unchanging, little republic concepts, everything is actually challenged here when it comes to post-independence. Okay, so socio-anthropological studies. Indian sociologists consider villages as the most important and foremost unit of understanding Indian society. The reason obvious, right? I've told you already, villages is considered as the ultimate signifier of social life in India, or the authentic manifestation of social life in India. Whatever word you want to use, you can use this, but you have to use this kind of words, okay? So authentic manifestation of the social life in India. The reason is, if you see villages, if you go to villages, you can see everything, like all social life aspects. You can see the caste or Judgmani system or the joint family, everything you can see over there. Apart from using indological sources, these studies took into account the actual social reality, that means fieldwork, to develop a more rational view of Indian villages. The studies done by G.S. Ghurye, Prabhu, Ramakrishna Mukherjee challenged the previous idea of village based on its isolated and unchanging nature. So they challenged it. Okay. Now Ghurye only gave the concept of this one which I have discussed with you, that clan exogamy. Clan, yesterday in lineage also I have told you, clan means what? Let's say this is when we discussed about descent. This is the first group, family. Above that some family is connected, that is your lineage. Above that, if you go for some more generation, if you consider the common ancestor, let's say X is a common ancestor, so many families, this is a clan. So entire members belonging to this group, who is the ancestor? This guy is the ancestor, right? For every family. So many families are here, many lineages are here. Okay, so all these are connected with this person. Everybody is considering this guy as a common ancestor. So these people are related by blood, right? So marriage among them is not allowed. So between them you cannot marry. So that is what clan exogamy. You have to identify another clan and you have to marry from the other clan where the ancestor should be Y, should not be X. That's what clan exogamy. This concept. Now, what do you mean by village exogamy? Village exogamy is an actual variation of clan exogamy only, because this entire members live in a village A. This members will live in a village B. So all the members are living in the same village means you cannot marry from village. So that lead to village exogamy. You have to marry outside the village. So village exogamy, you will see in the books, is actually traced from this idea of clan exogamy. Clan exogamy or Gotra, this is Gotra. Sometimes you will see Gotra, sometimes you will see village. All these are connected. All these are connected to common ancestor. Understand in this way so that you will not face any problem. Okay, and then what is the actual rule? Caste endogamy. You have to marry within the caste. Okay, so this clans, if you add further more clans, you will get a fratry, right? That is what we have discussed yesterday, fratry. So fratry is actually nothing but caste. So you have to marry within fratry or you have to marry within caste, but outside the clan. That's the marriage rule. So this concept is given by Ghurye basically. So what do you think? Ghurye will tell that there is no isolation. Villages are interconnected, at least in terms of what? Marriage. Simple. Okay. more specific village study attempting to understand particular aspect were conducted. Now different specific village studies will be conducted. For example, people will study the caste now, okay, specific. People will study Judgmani relation, people will study joint family, people will study green revolution, okay. So like different specific studies were actually started now. For example, W.H. Weiser's classic one second. Okay, so W.H. Weiser's study of Judgmani system. Study of Judgmani system is a classical text or classical text for understanding Indian social reality. So here I will update it. Okay, I will update it and I will send it. Okay, so even during this period, a very less number of field studies were conducted. So in the beginning, you know that already we are talking about mostly indologists, right? So these people are indologists. So they will try to identify the actual reality, and they have challenged the British understanding, but still the field work is actually very less. Now it will be more when it comes to the functional thinkers like MN Srinivas, etc. Right? So in the post-independence period, two types of village studies have been witnessed. Firstly, economic studies continued, like we were now talking about pre-independence. So there also economic studies was there, socio-anthropological studies is there. Now also we will talk about post-independence. Okay, we will talk about economic studies and purely sociological studies. So the reason why we are writing socio-anthropological before us, pre-independence, sociology was taught along with other disciplines, right? So mixed approach is what we have seen before independence. Post independence, sociology became independent. Sociology also became independent. So in the post independence period, firstly economic studies continued, but now based on welfare interest. Okay, so earlier it was based on identifying the indebtedness, unemployment, poverty, inequality, etc. But now welfare interest is the most important concern. The scope of rural surveys was widened in terms of its coverage. The findings of these surveys become the basis for establishment of number of institutions and the number of government programs like community development program. All these programs are based on the rural surveys which is actually conducted. Okay, but still these studies could not generate a holistic view of Indian villages, and the need for which was felt as early as in the beginning of 1950s. This led to intensification of sociological field studies during 1950s. Okay, now what we are going to discuss is more important for you, because we are going to discuss specifically sociological studies. So we have seen something related to pre-independence and pre-British time, not that important. British time also we have seen. Okay, so then British scholars understanding. Then from 1920, this period, 1920 to 1947, that's what we have discussed now. So here also some economic studies were there, some socio-anthropological studies was there. Even during this time also field studies are very less. Okay, economic studies are focusing on poverty, unemployment, indebtedness, etc. Now 1947 onwards is what we are discussing. So here also economic studies continued, but to help the government in the welfare interest. On the other hand, sociological studies you will see. So all these things, all these evolution has to be there in your mind. Okay, so now we'll go for sociological studies. So these studies were oriented towards the holistic approach. The book view gave way to field work. Okay, any doubt here? So now you're going to study based on field work. Actually the sociologists will go to the villages. They go to the villages, they study the particular village properly. They will understand each and everything of the village, like caste, how caste is behaving, how joint family system is functioning, how Judgmani system is functioning. Everything at the grassroots level understanding is what you're going to get when you go for field work. And MN Srinivas is very famous in this regard. So I've told you already his studies, and he come up with an understanding of dominant caste, Sanskritization, etc. through his village studies only. Okay. Now, The field studies were not only oriented towards collecting information but also employed various perspectives for the interpretation of data. A multidisciplinary perspective was often used to understand villages. The field view was conducted using either participant observation, okay, you will be part of that village and you will conduct the investigation, or direct observation method. You may not be part of their activities or anything, direct observation. This participant observation, etc., we will discuss in the research methods, not yet completed. We will do it after some time. Okay. MN Srinivas popularized direct observational method. These methods aimed at giving a more realistic and contextual view of village. Okay. So a multidisciplinary perspective was often used to understand villages. The field view was conducted using either the participant observation or direct observation method. MN Srinivas popularized the direct observational method. These methods aimed at giving a more realistic and contextual view of village for an authentic description of Indian social reality. In the year 1955 itself, this year is very important in Indian sociology and especially village studies. 4 major books on Indian village studies were published. It include SC Dube's Indian Village, Makim Marriott Village India, MN Srinivas India's Villages, Majumdar's Rural Profile. Later on, detailed and in-depth analysis of village were conducted, few examples of which are Indian Changing Villages. So these book names you can write. Now sometimes they can ask you specific questions also like this. What is the view of SC Dube? But then it will be very difficult for you. Okay, maybe SC Dube you can see, we will see that. But specifically you can ask Makim Marriott. We will see this when I discuss about Yogendra Singh. I'll discuss this briefly. MN Srinivas, you need to talk about dominant caste and Sanskritization especially. Majumdar, we are actually not discussing anywhere. Yeah. So these are the few village studies, that example that you can give. Then GS Ghurye also conducted a village study in 1962 after a century and a quarter. Okay. So in the late 1960s and 70s, Marxist perspective was also used. I've told you this. In the immediately after independence from 1947 onwards, Marxist perspective did not find much favor because of the welfare state. The emancipatory concerns which are raised by Marx is actually entrusted to the welfare state, right? So there is no question of using Marxist perspective at this point of time. So 60s and 70s, the state could not implement the policies in a right way which was expected. So there was a question for this particular perspective. Okay, for example, A.R. Desai's Rural Sociology in India, 1969, contained a number of village studies using this perspective. Similarly, in his book Peasant Struggle in India, 1979, contained focused analysis of the agrarian unrest in villages. Village studies during 1980s and 90s are far less and more focused in approach. So in 80s, 90s and all, the approach is basically you understand the dynamism. Dynamism means the change. You're trying to identify the change now, which happened with caste system, Judgmani relation, joint family, etc. by revisiting the villages. For example, Dube conducted a study. So you revisit the same village. MN Srinivas conducted a study on Sripuram village. So you revisit that village and you come up with an understanding. Okay. That has been the trend during 1980s and 90s. For example, studies conducted by Ghanshyam Shah. See, when you study about social movements, you have a chapter. So Ghanshyam Shah, there is a small book. If you want some extra reading, this book is what you need to get for that. Okay, but I will give you the content. There is no need to go for extra reading. But still, if somebody is having time, 2021, 22, you can get this book, Ghanshyam Shah. Social movement, big is there, small book is there. The small one is what you can get and you can read also. Leela Dube are a number of examples during this time. So we talked about a lot of thinkers here. Now the idea of village after independence, post-independence. So we need to now see what is the idea which is generated. So all these thinkers, okay. So all these thinkers that we discussed, like SC Dube, Makim Marriott, MN Srinivas, Majumdar, all people will come up with almost the same view. That is why I'm generalizing it here. Even though the question is asked specifically on any person, the general views you can write over there. You may not be able to write specifically, and it is very difficult for us to study specific. Obviously, I'm making it very clear that we cannot go and study each and every village study, but the trend is what we need to see. Even if the question is specific, you talk about this. This is the idea which was generated post-independence village studies. Whoever is the person, it doesn't matter for us. In case if there is a contrasting information, then only we need to make it, differentiated. So in the post-independence period, the idea of village is more authentic, realistic, and holistic. No doubt, different views are given, which are colored by different perspective. Means different views are there, different perspective are there, but there are certain common things. So what you can do is you can challenge the views which is raised by the British scholars. That is the first common thing that you can see in all these studies. Okay, at least that you can write. You can expand also. The myth of self-sufficiency of villages was broken. So there's a most important point which is common in all the studies. If you take any studies from here, in a worst case scenario, suppose a question is asked on Majumdar, still you should be writing the same thing. The myth of self-sufficiency of villages was broken in this study, which was generated during the British administration by the British scholars. And then that is how you need to approach that specific question in case if you're not well prepared for that particular village study. I'm saying hundreds of village studies are there. Impossible for not only for you, but for every student, it is the same situation. Okay. So the isolated nature of Indian villages has been rejected by almost all village study. MN Srinivas argued that India's villages are always part of a wider social reality. Andre Bethele, in a study of Sripuram village, states, at least as far as back in times as living memory went. That means you think back so long as you can think back. Okay, any years you can take it, your ancestors, okay, your grandfather or grandfather, you take any years back, you go any years back, there was no reason to believe that villages was fully self-sufficient. That means he mean to say that villages are interconnected at any point of time. Not in living memory, you can find that villages are self-sufficient. But what is the idea of British scholars? Villages are self-sufficient. Villages are little republic, having everything they need within themselves and are independent of any foreign relation. So if any question is asked on modern thinkers, you can write that statement. You can write, this is an understanding which was developed during British time, that villages are considered as monolithic, isolated and unchanging entities. Okay, villages are considered as little republic, okay, and having everything they need within themselves and almost independent of any foreign relation. So, and then you talk about the modern day understanding that this notion of village is actually broken, and you can talk about this person MN Srinivas, you can talk about Andre Bethele. Okay, so the statement you can write, you need to remember the statement also. Similar conclusions were drawn by SC Dube. SC Dube also the same statement, but he is identifying some characteristics of village. So it can be like that also, they can ask you, but understanding of the village is same. Village studies proved that there was considerable degree of diversity within the villages and between villages of different regions. Okay, thus monolithic view of Indian village was broken. So diversity is there, it is not monolithic. In the light of presence of diverse groupings and complex social relationship, MN Srinivas highlights the presence of village factionalism cutting across caste lines. Similarly, various studies on family and kinship highlights the diversity on Indian village. Okay, during 1950s and 60s, the general idea of Indian village, okay, now. Village factionalism means, you see, let's suppose this is village, okay, so here there may be Brahmin, okay, here may be Kshatriya, Vaishya, different people are living, okay, so between them there is a sense of distance, there may be animosity, etc. will be there, but village factionalism means, so this is village A, this is village B. When it comes to village A and B, what matters is not the caste. The Brahmin here and the Brahmin here, they were not close, okay. All these together and all these together is actually having the bond. That's what you mean by village factionalism. Okay, so it's almost like a class. The one village actually acting as a class, the other village another class. Not the caste is important. That's what village factionalism. During 1950s and 60s, the general idea of Indian village was based on cooperation and interdependence. Okay, so that self-sufficiency idea is now broken. So cooperation, interdependence. See, if you need to write answer for this post-independence village study, any village study, you take the pre-independent study. There, I have told you, isolated, monolithic, unchanging, little republic, everything they need within themselves, independent of foreign relation. You write the contrast of everything. It doesn't matter about whom you're writing, about whose theory you're writing. Almost all the theories are saying the same thing. Okay, so that's how you can complete this answer in case if specific questions are asked. Rarely asked, but if it is asked, that is how you should write. Unless if you know the exact village study, it is fine. Otherwise, various institutions like caste, Judgmani system, etc., were seen in reciprocal terms. Okay, so everything is seen in terms of cooperation and interdependence. So what is this understanding in terms of cooperation? This is which perspective? Functional perspective. So caste, Judgmani system, etc., the family, everything is seen in functional terms. Studies done by Dube, Srinivas reinforced unity and reciprocity in Indian village. So for example, Judgmani system is seen in reciprocal terms, right? Judgman, and there will be Kamins, right? So Kamins are working for the Judgman, but Judgmans will take care of Kamins. So this is what you mean by reciprocal relation, and this is functional. There is a unity also. So there was a unity, there was a reciprocal relation, and it is functional. On the other hand, now Marxist will highlight the exploitative nature. Okay, so exploitative nature of these things. So that is a difference in perspective. I've told you against the British scholars' view, everybody is almost joining hands together, and everybody is having the same opinion. It's not isolated, it's not monolithic, it's not unchanging, etc. That is same for Marxist or functionalist. But between them, what the functionalist will do, they will try to see in reciprocal terms or functional terms, here exploitative terms. For example, the same Judgmani system that we have discussed, Marxist will consider it as exploitative in nature. Caste is exploitative in nature, like that. Studies done by Bethe and Ornstein highlighted the exploitative nature of Judgmani system. So these are polar opposites. So here we are talking about different perspective, right? So here we are talking about difference in perspective. Before we were talking about difference between pre-independence and post-independence study. A.R. Desai's writing on agrarian unrest is well known in this context. Similarly, various studies on land reform and green revolution using Marxist perspective provided a critique of the government policies and programs. On the whole, village was essentially understood as a community acting as a source of identification of people. Adrian Mayer concept of village patriotism. It is similar to patriotism. When we talk about our country, we talk about patriotism. Okay, so exactly in the similar way, from a village, there is a village patriotism. Nationalism and patriotism is both are same or different? When we talk about nationalism and when we talk about patriotism, both are same or different? Not in sociology context. This is from ethics only. There was an ethics related question before also. What do you mean by patriotism? Give an example from your life to something like that. There was a question. Both are same or different?
Different.
How it is different? What about others? Is it same?
Maybe patriotism doesn't have a certain, like, nationalism means it covers the full country in that context. Patriotism, it may be for a small boundary also.
No. That's not the case. Nationalism, when we talk, I'll briefly tell, I don't want to get into this, the big debate, and if you are able to understand this, you are at a very good level also, but here I'm not discussing that level. So nationalism means you're blindly believing and supporting the state. Okay, so for example, you don't question the state. Whatever state is saying, you will obey, and you will be proud in that. For example, the colonialism and all, right? Whether the state is doing the right thing or wrong thing, it doesn't matter. You are pride, or you are proud in whatever the state is doing. You're supporting whatever the state is doing. Whether it is good or bad, there is no question. When it comes to patriotism, this means a love towards state. This shows the blind love towards state. Here also love is there, but it's not blind love. If state is doing something bad, then you will question this. You will try to correct it. For example, when the English is going for colonialism, their idea is what? That is nationalism. They are experiencing that pride in that, right? Patriotism means you should check, you should correct it. There should be a thought process that this is not a right thing to do. So that in both cases you will talk about love towards nation. So here also love is there, here also love is there. But this is a blind love. You support everything that nation is doing. But here you don't support everything that the nation is doing. If something bad is happening, ethically something bad is there, so you will question the state. So what is ethical in this, nationalism or patriotism? Patriotism. So that's why patriotism related questions will come in ethics. That question was asked also before. Okay. Now Adrian Mayer gave the concept of village patriotism. That means the commitment and love towards your village, like nation only, but at the smaller level. Mackim Marriott used Redfield's notion of little community to study Indian village. I'll briefly talk about this idea when we discuss about Yogendra Singh. Okay, so we discuss about modernization of Indian tradition. There I'll talk about what is this little community, this idea. Not that important, but we'll discuss. On the other hand, studies done by F.G. Bailey, Paul Gilbert, and Andre Bethé contested the excessive emphasis on communitarian character. So functionalist, this is opposite to functionalist, right? Functionalists are saying communitarian, togetherness, all this highlighting reciprocal terms, jointness, function, unity. But these thinkers are questioning that and highlighted the deep-seated cleavages between Brahmins and Kshatriya, okay, Kshatriya versus Vaishya, or Judgmans and Cummings. So there is a deep-seated cleavage or issues which underlies the apparent unity of the village. Okay, now, for example, Bethé argued Sripuram as a whole constituted a unit in physical and to a much lesser extent in a social sense. What do you mean by that? There is a unity, physically they are together in a village, right? All the people are together in the village, that is physical unity. But social sense, not much unity is there. But what the functionalists say, like SC Dube, MN Srinivas, etc., that we have discussed just before, they are saying they are connected socially as well as physically, right? In a village, that's what I mean by physical connectivity, and socially means the caste is unifying, the Judgmani system is ensuring the unity, like that. See, all these perspectives you know already, what is functional, what is conflict, all these we have taken time and we have studied and prepared. That's why here in this study itself, we are talking multiple perspectives together. There's no point in talking functionalist idea first and then conflict or this perspective, opposite. So here I've discussed about both. So basically post-independence, what I told you is, if I summarize here, what I told you is pre-independence, the British idea is actually questioned and challenged. The idea of monolithic, isolated, unchanging character of Indian villages negated, questioned and challenged. Indian villages are not little republic, they are not self-sufficient, and they were always dependent on others. Okay, at least in case of marriages, they are always dependent. So all those notions of British understanding is actually challenged. Apart from that, within when we talk about post-independence, there are different groups. One followed an understanding based on cooperation, okay, the other on the basis of exploitation. Okay, so that's what we have discussed. Therefore, the idea of village in post-independence was based on dynamic and holistic and diverse nature of Indian villages. So that's about village studies. Slightly lengthy topic, but you need to read from your side here. Additional materials, if you have time, if you're taking 2021 exams, you can read from IGNO. Okay, essential sociology also, you will get nothing. because it is very difficult to prepare independent village studies. Essential sociology, this is there. You can go for SC Dube. That anyway, I will do it. I'll update it in the app. The short videos I will update later. So let's cover the syllabus first. And once we cover the syllabus, I'll update all these short videos which is possible. SC Dube and all I will try to cover over there. This study, this we will cover. This short studies, short concepts like dominant caste. These are short answers that I will cover separately. Any doubts here? Okay, now next topic is actually land tenure system. Land tenure system we will discuss today, and after this the next topic is land reform. But land reform they won't ask you in sociology. Okay, so we don't want to study land reform. What are the reforms, right? The abolition of zamindars, tenancy reforms, ceiling on landholding, cooperative farming, consolidation of landholding. These are various land reforms. But you need to study that in history. So what I'll do is I will update a video in the app. So today itself I'll do that. So tomorrow when we go with impact of land reforms, before that please watch that video. I will also share the link in YouTube also. Okay, so watch the video on reforms. This is just part of your history only. What we need here is the impact, and that too not economic impact. We are not concerned about economic impact. How land reforms made an impact on caste, joint family, right? Joint family split into nuclear family. One of the main reasons why nuclear family emerged is because of land reform. I'll tell you that tomorrow. And then how it related to migration, how it is affecting the other social aspects is what we need to see. So, but before that, I'll share the land reform video. Just 30 minutes is there. You just watch that video. And I will also update that video in the app. I will send you in YouTube also. So then we can discuss the impact tomorrow. So that's actually the plan of discussing the impact. Land tenure system. Land tenure system means what? I'm basically more interested in talking about the system under which you possess land. And this Zamindari settlement, Mahalwari settlement, Ryotwari settlement, all these are different land tenure system. So that is also actually a history topic, but the impact is more important. But quickly I will tell you what are the different land tenure system. Maybe you know about Zamindari system, Ryotwari system, Mahalwari system, but you may not have idea about the pre-Islamic time, Islamic period, etc. Okay, so we will briefly cover that also, but not that important. Nobody will ask you what is land tenure system in sociology paper. You will never see this kind of question after 2000. Maybe before 2000 you might see one or two question. Okay, but after that you won't see this question after 2000. Yes, this is not that important. There are a lot of other areas, dynamic areas to ask. Impact you will expect. Okay, so land tenure system. Literally the word tenure is derived from Latin word tenure, means to hold. 1 second. Tenio. This is, I think this is tenio. Just, yeah, this is tenio. Okay. Latin word, no, tenio. Means to hold. Therefore, the term land tenure is used to refer to the condition under which the land is held. Okay. So, for example, when we talk about permanent settlement, under which condition the land is held, till the time you pay the tax, the land is with you, right? So, that is a condition under which you hold the land. That's what land tenure system. It is seen as an arrangement by which the farmer used to hold or control the land. It also specifies the conditions which must be observed with respect to its use and occupancy. So how you're going to use it, how you possess this, etc. has to be specified and clear under the tenure system. So different tenure systems are there, different period. Land tenure system in India is highly dynamic, and the conditions of land tenure changes with change in authority. So these are different periods. In the pre-Islamic period, due to diversity in political grouping, there were different types of land tenure system. The land rights in general were based on claims of village community and the traditional rights of a particular farmer over land. Okay, so it is based on the claims of village community, their idea, the traditional concepts, and the rights of particular farmer over the land. The king collected tax from the peasants or the village through hierarchy of officials, but the traditional rights of peasants over the land were kept unchanged. So the peasants were kept as the owners of the land, but the king used to collect tax from the peasants. During the Mughal period, the traditional rights were accepted in exchange of usual taxes. So the traditional rights of the peasants continued upon the taxes, the same thing. But during this period, the land tenures are made more formal and systematic. Small rulers or government officers used to collect tax specified by the Mughal rulers. For example, Akbar introduced radical reforms in land tenure system by replacing the payment of tax in kind. Before it was in kind, like part of produce, but now in monetary terms based on average yield of land. So these are important from your GS point of view also. So based on average yield of land, now they are imposing the tax. Land register system were introduced. Okay, again important from GS point of view. And taxes were levied on the basis of fixed criteria such as quality of soil, etc. After the death of Aurangzeb, the authority of center decreased, and subsequently the task of collecting taxes were given to the zamindars on the basis of highest bidding. So this is actually known as quinquennial settlement, which actually happened, on the basis of highest bidding. That is during Warren Hastings' time. Okay, so zamindars will quote an unrealistic amount while the bidding process, so they get the right to collect revenue, and they will keep on exploiting the peasants. This led to increase in exploitation of the peasants by zamindars. Thus, zamindars emerged as the first intermediary between the direct tax relation between government and cultivator. So it's like this. So this zamindar will, different zamindars will be called for a bidding process. So the government will announce that we are going to conduct a bidding process. So the person who is quoting the maximum amount will get the zamindariship. Now this is before 1793. 1793 police reform was introduced. Police officials were appointed. Police stations were established. But before 1793, zamindars enjoyed the power of policing. So these people are desperate to get the zamindariship. So this person will quote the highest amount to the state. The person Z will promise maximum amount to the state. So the state will give the zamindariship to this person. Now he start exploiting the peasants. Okay, so he will exploit the peasant. At the same time, he may not be able to collect that amount which is actually promised to the state. So the state is also in loss, peasant is also in loss. Only this person is actually gaining. Initially, this settlement was for 5 years. Okay, but because of this contract for 5 years, even after 1 year, if the zamindar is not paying, you cannot do anything. 2 years, state cannot do anything. 3 years, state cannot do anything. State have to wait for 5 years to evict the zamindar, and there is no other, criminal case or punishment which is given. So zamindar, he may be able to realize 1 lakh from the land or from the peasant, but he promised 5 lakh. But he will collect only 1 lakh. What he can collect is actually 1 lakh only, but he promised 5 lakh. So if you pay this 1 lakh to state, you will lose the zamindariship. If you pay 10,000 also, you lose the zamindariship. And only thing what will happen is you will lose the zamindariship. There is no other punitive measures. So he will prefer to pay 10,000 and will tell that I was able to collect this much only. So it is a burden for the state as well as for the peasant. Only this person is getting benefit. Then it was actually changed to 5 years from 1 year. Okay, but even then the problem remained the same. So this was actually the initial settlement. I will also share a video in this regard. So not important from sociological point of view, what was the settlement and all. This is your GS only. That's why I'm not so much concerned about this discussion here. this land revenue settlement. Okay, now British period, mainly with the establishment of British rule in India, new land tenure system were evolved to fulfill the colonial interest between 1760s and 90s. A number of experiments were done, finally culminating into the permanent settlement in 1793, popularly known as Zamindari settlement. With the expansion of British rule to other parts of the country, other variants of land tenure like Ryotwari and Mahalwari system emerged. Again, history. Apart from this, a large number of local variation, particularly in the princely states, continued. In Rajasthan, the popular form was Jagirdari system. So, Zamindars are known in different areas in different names. One such system is Jagirdari system. Now, what is Zamindari system? Introduced in 1793 by Lord Cornwallis and John Shore. Here the system is like this. The state will appoint the Zamindar to collect tax from the peasant. So peasant have to pay to Zamindar, Zamindar will pay to the state. If the peasant is not able to pay, the peasant will be evicted and another peasant will come. So this is a condition under which he possesses the land. That is what you mean by land tenure system. Okay. So Zamindar is made as the owner of the land, peasant versus Zamindar, Zamindar is the owner. But this is not absolute ownership. Between Zamindar and state, state is the owner. So just like Zamindar can evict the peasant, the state can also evict the Zamindar. If the Zamindar is not able to pay the tax to the state, under which law? Sunset law, introduced in 1794. See, this is your GS discussion. I will share you the video also of this discussion. I'm quickly telling you so that when you watch the video, it will be clear to you. We are not concerned about these areas in our sociology, okay? 1794. And which all areas are actually covered? Eastern part of India mainly, you know, Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, parts of Tamil Nadu, and parts of Benares. Around 19% of British India is actually covered. 19% of British India. Okay. Then Ryotwari system, introduced by Thomas Munro and Reed. This was the prelims question in 2017. Direct question, who introduced? That's it. It covered entire Tamil Nadu, central part of India, okay, and this Bombay, Maharashtra, Sindh, all these regions are actually covered by this one. So this is actually the maximum, 51% of India. Okay, here the system was like this. Peasant will pay to the state directly. Peasant and state came into direct contact through a British official. So British official will collect and will pay to the state. So peasant was given the ownership here in Ryotwari system. Mahalwari system, in between there is a village or village panchayat. Village panchayat will collect money and will give it to state. So rest of the 30% was Mahalwari system. Okay, I will discuss this in detail tomorrow, the impact we need to cover. Okay, so we will cover the impact tomorrow of this land tenure system. Quickly we can cover, and also we will discuss about the impact of land reform, and then we will talk about green revolution and the impact, which is again very important. All these impact or the consequences is more important from sociological point of view. Even when we talk about green revolution, we know what is green revolution, what happened with green revolution, food scarce country to food rich country. These, we are not concerned about that. We are concerned about how green revolution affected sex ratio, how green revolution affected the caste, how it affected migration, how it affected the family. These are the things that we are concerned in. Okay, so that we will see tomorrow. Okay, now, are you able to go with the speed? Is this high speed or is it okay? Are you able to follow me?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Because now we are done with thinkers, so the idea is to complete the syllabus faster. So I have already promised you that we will complete in 2 months, and all the videos will be anyway available for you. So in case if you face any difficulty, you can watch it again and again, and you can ask me also anytime. So anytime I'm available in WhatsApp. So that's why, and these topics are not that important when it comes to, you know, exam. We have already discussed all the important areas in detail. We had spent a lot of time. Don't compare these topics and this discussion with those discussion. That's entirely different concepts. So there you are just learning sociology, and the thinkers part, we have spent a lot of time over there. And now you're already matured, so we will go in that way only. Okay, can we stop here today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so see you. Bye.